It's no problem to say goodbye to someone because rebirth teaches us that we will be together again anyway, right? Wrong, as in, that's wrong view. Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. Yes, it's time for another journaling episode. And after considering Western psychology and attachment styles, or ways of connecting, and Buddhist attachment and non-attachment, I am reminded of how I have drawn on the idea of rebirth to help me with saying goodbye to family and friends. Thank you for being with me today as I share a reflection on how I once used the concept of rebirth as an unskillful way of dealing with my attachment to the people I cared about. Unlike some of my other Buddhist friends who come from a Judeo-Christian background, I did not have a problem accepting the idea of rebirth. In fact, it's possible that my belief in rebirth made it easier for me to come to Buddhism. I just recall that since the time I was a child, the concept of rebirth made sense to me. I have no idea why. And once, when I spoke with my mother about it, she was just as baffled. There had not been any encounters in our family or community with Hindus or Buddhists. And I held this belief so early on, I don't remember holding any other view. So I guess this is just, part of my karma, part of who I am. Now, for years, I didn't really do much with this belief in rebirth. I didn't think about it often. When I began to learn about Buddhism, then rebirth became something that I contemplated. And initially, sitting with different Buddhist groups and learning with different teachers, I became exposed to ideas such as, at one point, everyone has been your mother, or you were their mother, most likely both, or that we have all been in each other's lives in different ways across many lifetimes, or that people who you have had difficulties with keep popping up in your various lifetimes until these issues are resolved. In fact, with this last concept of rebirth, a classmate and I, who initially had a combative relationship, began to joke that he had killed me in another lifetime. I don't even know how we got to this point, although the good news is we went from being combative to being able to joke and enjoy each other's company. So we got to this point. But then after a while, he no longer enjoyed the joke because the idea of it being true was upsetting to him. And so we moved on. At some point, I began to use the idea of rebirth as a way to console myself when I knew I might not see someone again. Not just because someone would die. Initially, this was more about perhaps a colleague whom I really liked, or a classmate who I really enjoyed was leaving, and I was really going to miss them. And if they were moving away, I knew it was likely that we would not see each other again, especially some of my friends who were moving back to other countries. As a form of defense, or in response to the attachment I had developed to that person, I would remind myself that they were leaving now, but I would probably see them again in another life. And for the most part, that helped me feel less sad. If we look at this through the lens of connection styles, not Buddhist attachment, but psychology, it's clear to me that drawing upon the idea of rebirth to help me process my feelings over someone leaving is not an example of secure attachment. Maybe I can make a case for it as a tool I used to arrive at a place of secure attachment, but this is, unimportant. And remember, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not an enlightened master, just a person living and learning in this world. This approach was really helpful, though. And as I moved forward with my Buddhist practice, and I wrote about my experiences in losing my key family members, and as I interviewed Buddhist teachers about their experiences with death and grief, I began to see the error of my ways. And in a discussion with my teacher, I asked, was it better to celebrate death and be sad about birth? Because we should not want someone to come back. And what he said to me was, no, that was not a correct view. And the reason was when someone dies, you don't know what his or her or their rebirth will be. A reminder that when someone dies, you don't know if they will be reborn into a lesser realm. A human rebirth is the best. But really, what he taught me was that my wish for others is that they do not return at all. Later, I realized I should not use the idea of rebirth to feel better about someone leaving my life. I should not want any of us to be together in a future life, because the goal is to experience liberation from suffering and stop coming back. So my thought of, well, at least I'll see her again in a future life, was actually selfish, to be honest, selfish, and also making an assumption that I wasn't going to progress on the path, and inadvertently not cheering her on towards her own progress on the path, right? Like I wasn't wishing her final liberation. I was wishing her back into a future rebirth with me. So that was definitely unskillful and a wrong view. And here's where I think I can integrate secure attachment or connection with skillful Buddhist attachment. When someone is leaving to another city, state, country, or has died, I can acknowledge that I will miss that person, but I want to be able to let them go and wish them well, not to rely on thinking that I will see them again in another life, but appreciate the time we had here and to wish them either a good rebirth or better yet, no rebirth at all. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma Podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.